Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back. My name's Erica and this is Books Carry Me Away. This is my April wrap up and my O.W.L.s Readathon wrap up. I kind of passed the Owls. I'll get into that a little bit more, but I went and did the Potioneer route. So I had to read 5 books, and then I also added on Animagus training, so I had to add another one. So a total of six books for the O.W.L.s Readathon, and I was able to complete the majority of those. In total, over this month, I read 9 books, so a total of 3,150 pages. A lot of pages, feeling really strong. I was able to complete all those with the help of audiobooks. So in regards to audiobooks, I will listen to the majority of the stuff that I can find through Audible, Libby, Scribd, things like that. And what I do is I'll find these audiobooks and kind of have the physical books as well, but depending on what I have to complete during the day, I'm either listening to audiobook while I'm doing paperwork or cleaning the house or doing big projects like repainting a room or going outside and weed eating and doing like fencing and gardening things. So I think I listened to and read to 5 books. So that's kind of how I work with it. So my total page count isn't completely accurate, but I do a page count in my book journal, so I total it. So over the month, I read 1 children's novel, 4 middle grade novels, 3 young adult novels, and 1 adult. And I'm pretty sure that adds up to 9. As you can tell, I'm like, okay, am I that confident that I got all the books? And then what I got in regards to star ratings as well, I had 3 5-star reads, really strong reads, 2 4-star reads, and then I had, I think it was 4 3 stars. And a couple of them were strong 3 stars and a couple of them were low 3 stars. Like, I don't know if I really enjoyed them at all and wouldn't reread them and all that type of stuff. So, but that is my statistics for the month. So I'm going to start kind of going through what books I have read. So the first book that I read this month was for the arithmancy prompt, which was read a novel outside of your comfort zone. So a children's classic like Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery is outside of my comfort zone. And it was a 4-star read for me. I really enjoyed the character of Anne. She is just this rambunctious redhead that just cannot stay out of trouble. As much good as she wants to do, she gets in just as much bad. And I just loved just following her from the age of 11 whenever she is first a orphan girl that is picked up by Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert, who were wanting a boy to help them out around the house and around the farm, and they ended up with Anne out of like a fluke thing, and they end up taking her under their wing and trying to help her out and show her some love, and in return gaining love themselves. So I loved Anne for her energy, her spunk and tenacity, and she just every once in a while would just get so wound up on stuff. It was like, oh, okay, calm down just a bit. But and then you just enjoyed her just different antics that she did in regards to renaming things in the setting. She loved to talk about this avenue that was full of like flowering trees, and she called it something the Great White Flowering Way, and then the Lake of Shining Waters outside of her window. She just had such a great, and she had an imagination that all book lovers, you have, and that you want children to grow with, is this imagination that Anne has. And she gets wrapped up in finding her bosom buddy or her best friend, who comes out to be Diana, who lives down the way a bit, and they just go on all these silly little adventures. She's got a nemesis at school called Gilbert, and he just torments her, but he torments her in a sense, but wants to be friends. And then they also are kind of like the head of their class, so you just see her constantly clashing with Gilbert and trying to best him in whatever subject or project that they're working on in school. But throughout the novel, you're meeting Anne work through different facets of her life in regards to growing up. So being kind of envious of other people's looks, she's concerned about her red hair, she's envious of like people in their dress and just kind of how that portrays different things. and confidence, and she wants these puffy sleeves because she thinks that is the key to being beautiful, or this dark black hair. And I think that's a really good message for kids to read, is like, you know, she's still like the most liked kid at school, and she's just has this red hair and these kind of dingy clothes, but eventually as she grows through the novel, she's getting used to it. In a sense, she tries to dye her hair once and it doesn't really work out for her favor. And then she ends up getting the puffy sleeves, but she ends up growing through this novel. I think she ends up being 16 at the end of the novel. She just continually impressed me throughout the book, and the only reason I didn't give this 5 stars was because I don't know, whenever I'm looking for a 5-star book, I'm looking for something that the plot just, I mean, it does complete itself because it's a story of her life, but there wasn't like one anchoring problem that I feel like I want in a 5-star book. There was multiple problems, and it just kind of every once in a while got really, really choppy in regards to like, okay, Anne had this problem in this chapter, she completed it that chapter. The next chapter was another problem, she did this again, and it was like, oh my gosh. So, but I still loved it for the fact of, you know, you saw Anne grow, and then between Marilla and Matthew, oh, my heart Matthew, love him to death. And Marilla, it was hard to like her at the beginning, but then you ended up growing with her in your love for Anne, because you can't not love Anne. So would I reread this? Yes, because it was just heartwarming and just something that I feel like everybody should read at least once. Now, I don't know if I'll necessarily continue on the 8-book series journey. It might be something, you know, down the road I might try to do, but I don't have any intention of picking it up at the moment. So that was my first book. Next prompt that I had to read for Owls was The Care of Magical Creatures, and I had to have a book with a creature on the front that had a beak. So I picked up The Near Witch, which has the little raven that has a beak. It is The Near Witch by Victoria Schwab. This is her debut novel that they re-released, and it came out, I think, last year is whenever it got re-released. I'd never gotten around to it. Not my favorite Schwab book that I've ever read. I love Schwab. I'm in love with all of her Darker Shades of Magic books and then her villain series. And I think I just was looking for all that, but I have to remember too that it was her debut novel. So there are hints of her in this. That's why I gave it 3 stars, and I feel like it was a kind of strong 3-star for me because I saw her world building that I love. I thought the pacing was a little off in some points. I feel like the middle dragged a lot and then it wrapped up really quickly. But the world building is what kind of kept me reading, was because it's set in this town of Near, and in this town of Near there are no strangers, and this Lexi character is a girl that is kind of like a tracker hunter thing, and she describes the place that she lives so descriptively, and Victoria does a great job in regards to setting up like the locations of different people's houses, talking about the moors itself. So off this town of Near there are the moors, and at the moors there's this mist and the wind that speaks that she can kind of hear, and like the eerie feeling. It's very atmospheric in regards to like a fall book. I think I really would have liked it a lot better in the fall versus in the spring. Character wise, I feel like is where she lacked, which she is so strong with in all of her other books, and I think that's her big like development as an author, was in the character development. I feel like Lexi and this character, oh god, what is his name, the main boy character, could have been fleshed out a lot more, and I think it would have really enhanced the story. And then they had some bad insta-love. Like, I'm okay with insta-love, but not like one kiss and we're gonna be together forever type insta-love, which this kind of was. So that's kind of where I felt like I was not liking this as much, and I don't know if I necessarily would reread this again. Like I said, it would have to be the right time in regards to like, if it's a spooky crisp fall day, I think I would pick this up and really enjoy reading about the moors and then town of Near and this Near witch that kind of is stealing these children. And so I think that is probably my least favorite Schwab book, but I still love her, and I'm still going to continue reading through the rest of the novels that I have of Schwab. Next prompt that I had to do for my Owls was Charms. And Charms, I had to find a book that had white on the cover. So the book that I had white on the cover and worked out really great because this is part of the Cosmere read-along that I'm also doing is Brandon Sanderson's The Final Empire. This is my first time reading the Mistborn trilogy. I have all the rest of the trilogy over on my bookshelves. I'm going to work through that. This is an adult fantasy novel, and this thing is amazing. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, super strong, probably my favorite book, one of my favorite books of the month. I didn't end up finishing this until early this week, so this is where it gets a little fuzzy in regards to if I completed my owls or not. I am taking the fact of Hermione had to use the time turner to complete all her classes, so I am using a time turner to count this in my TBR and make me a Potioneer. So, but this book just was so strong. It is about a group of characters that are trying to bring down the final empire and the Dark Lord that has won and has been oppressing this country for over 1,000 years. And I didn't know that it was going to be such a gang kind of character group, which I love, especially about like Six of Crows, what I feel like saved the book for Roshni Choshni's one. What is it? Oh, The Gilded Wolves. Like I didn't know I love gangs of characters and like them trying to pull off a plan, and this was all of that, and I loved it. And I thought the characters were super strong in Vin and in Kelsier. Oh, Kelsier, he is just a snarky, confident guy that I just loved reading about. And Vin is our main heroine, and she is a younger character in comparison to all the other gang members, and this is her kind of growing up through the novel and learning about how to have a found family, which I think is another great theme that I loved about this book in regards to finding friends and caring for them, even though she lives in this awful world where she's kind of like this what's called a ska, and it's kind of like the lower class, so she's had to fend for herself. She had to thieve and steal and all that type of stuff before she met this group. And what she does in this book is she is trying to learn a magic system called allomancy, which involves ingesting metals, and these metals have different type of abilities and times that they kind of last through, like in her fight. And she is learning this through Kelsier, who is also a Mistborn, and this is her trying to figure out how to use her allomancy gift and her Mistborn gift to help the cause, to help herself, just getting through this oppression of her just kind of class, and how to infiltrate into the nobility sector, and then also ultimately to get rid of the Lord Ruler. And I just think Brandon Sanderson did an amazing job in his world building in regards to the political system. So, you know, he had the ska, he had the nobility, then there was like a chief ministry magic something, I can't remember the name of it, and then the overall Lord Ruler. And then he did a great job with, it's not, I don't know if it's eerie or of oppressive nature. It's this ash falling city where they talk about how there's always ash and there's black and gray, very monotone. And Kelsier talks about the fact that there used to be green, there used to be yellow, and Vin is like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. That sounds so weird and so different. And I think that's such a great world building thing. And then his magic system, oh my gosh, you need like a science degree sometimes to, you know, figure it out sometimes. But I thought he did a great job in like hitting every single point. Like, okay, you burn this metal to get this ability, and this ability will last for this long. Then it's tied into this other metal, and it was just like, oh my God, to have that type of world building and plot, it's like, that was so good. So I loved it. And then the plot and the pacing of the story, I thought there was a great arc to the plot, and we got there and it finished up and wrapped up nicely. There was some parts in the middle, something happens to Vin, and it was like, okay, it's dragging out just a bit, but I mean, I would read this in a heartbeat. I listened to it on audiobook, and then I also read it physically. I loved the audiobook. I thought that was really good. I thought the narrator did a great job in adding different accents, because everybody was a little bit different, and there's six kind of like 2 main characters probably 6 or 7 side characters, and they all had their own personality and narration and like accent, and I thought he did a great job with it. So that is Charms. So the next OWL prompt that I had to complete was herbology, and I had to find a book that started with M. So the book I picked up was Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, and I gave this book 5 stars. It is a young adult, new adult fantasy, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation because it just leans a little bit towards the explicit in regards to some mentions of sex. I would classify this as more new adult versus young adult just because that reason. So this is a follow-up to Strange the Dreamer. I read Strange the Dreamer in March, so this is the second book in the Strange the Dreamer duology. This follows and continues the story of Laszlo and Sarai. I'm not going to give too much away in regards to the story and the plot, but I feel like this added so much more to the previous story for the fact of it had a central problem. I felt like everything was so vague in Strange the Dreamer. There was a problem between the gods / god spawn and the people of Weep, and so that was just kind of like the overlying theme and problem for Strange the Dreamer. This one had 2 specific characters that caused problems. So there was a way to kind of conclude it at the end, which I liked. I liked the fact that there was a problem with these characters. We either resolved it in one way or the other, dealt with them in one way or the other, and it just concluded very nicely and strong for just 2 books. So I thought that was really great. The thing that I liked more about Muse and Nightmares was it was more based on the emotional feelings. So I had a problem with Strange the Dreamer being too flowery in regards to the descriptions of places, settings, things. This was more the inner workings and the emotions that a character was having that I enjoyed a lot more. So I think that's why this was such a 5-star read for me, because it was more emotional based versus setting and world based, I guess. So really enjoyed what went on with the characters. I enjoyed the character growth of both Laszlo and Sarai in regards to coming into their powers that they have. And then I loved Minya. Oh, she's such a little firecracker. I loved her. I enjoyed where she went in the story. I think at the end, I would have liked a little bit more character resolution for her. And then there was a new character that was brought in, and she's kind of like she's set up as a foe, but I really liked her character arc that just started in this book and then finished in this book. So it was kind of thrown in, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like where this is going, because she should have been brought up in the first book, but I liked where her character ended up being. I thought the pacing was really great. I did listen to the majority of this. I'm saying probably out of the 500 some odd pages, I maybe read 100 pages of the physical book. I listened to the audio, loved the narrator. He's great. Definitely could listen to him read the phone book and be quite happy. I thought he did a great job with a lot of the inflections of emotions and things like that. I would pick this up and reread this over Strange the Dreamer any day. I don't know if you technically can you do that? We're just going to make up our own rules and say that I'm going to read this book and forget about the first book, but that's that. So Potions was my final prompt for the Owls to become a Potioneer, and with Potions you had to pick up a book that was less than 150 pages. So I picked up The Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. I can never get his name right. This is a children's novel, and I gave this 3 stars just for the fact of didn't necessarily have a huge plot resolution at the end. I mean, it's 80 pages and it's a kid's novel, and you know, I don't know if I was expecting a little too much out of it. So this was a physical read for me. They didn't have an audiobook for it, or I didn't think it was necessary to find an audiobook for an 80-page book. So the story is about the Fantastic Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox terrorizes these three very nasty farmers. One farmer is a chicken farmer, and then the other one's a turkey and apple, and he does like strong cider. And then the other one is a duck and goose farmer, and all three of them have very nasty traits in regards to how they treat women, so I had a little bit of a problem with that. So I was kind of glad that they didn't get what they wanted at the end of the story. But these three farmers go up to the hill where Mr. Fox's den is, and they just bring bulldozers or shovels and shotguns and all that type of stuff, and they go up and they try to get Mr. Fox. And so it's about the story of Mr. Fox trying to save his family, trying to figure out how to get food, how to help his neighbors, things like that. That's all there really is to say about it. I would pick it up just because it's so short. I still have not watched the movie that is out for the Fantastic Mr. Fox. I completely forgot about it until I started doing the wrap-up. So I will add that in a reading vlog to see if it's anything in comparison to the Fantastic Mr. Fox. I am going to continue on reading more of Roald Dahl's stuff. I have a collection of about 10 or so books, so I think I've read this one and Matilda, and that's it. So I will let you know how the rest of it goes. So on top of the 5 books that I needed to read to become a Potioneer, I also wanted to become an animagus. So I needed to pick up a book that would fill the transfiguration prompt, and that had to involve a character that was shape-shifting or some sort of shape-shifting in the book. I thought I would pick up Of Curses and Kisses by Sandae Menon. And this is one of my first books of hers, and the whole premise or the whole way that this book was sold to me, and I don't know if I had just heard so much about it on BookTube, that it was supposed to be a young adult fantasy novel, fantasy contemporary, and it was supposed to be kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I listened to this on audio, and then I also read it physically. They had 2 great narrators for both the female character and the male character. I liked the audiobook, I think, better than physically reading it this time around. And I think it was just because I was so, kind of disappointed in it, because I was wanting more of the Beauty and the Beast things, like the magic and the beastly shape-shifting type things. And you didn't really get that. You got Beauty and the Beast themes, and the main female character is Jaya, and Jaya is an Indian princess that has a sister that has kind of got wrapped up into some tabloid problems and kind of like some problems for their family, and they just need to kind of lay low. So she offers to go with her sister to Aspen, Colorado, to this St. Rosetta's Academy, where she thinks that they're going to be able to get away, but she's also got an ulterior motive of finding this guy named Lord Grey Emerson, and she thinks that he's the one that started the rumor, because these 2 families, Jaya and Grey's family, have been feuding for centuries. There's supposed to be a curse, and that's where the Beauty and the Beast themes come in. So with this curse, Grey has heard that his family stole the ruby from Jaya's family. Jaya's great-great-grandmother cursed the ruby, and it's been kind of lost to the family. And because of this loss, because of this curse, Grey thinks his life is going to end on his 16th birthday. I think it's his 16th birthday. And so the whole story, he is just kind of pushing people away, being really standoffish, being this lone wolf type character. And Jaya is trying to make Grey fall in love with her because she thinks it would be the ultimate revenge, and that's the reason he's there and she's there. And she has this rose necklace that her father gave her, and as these 2 characters start coming together and kind of having a relationship that isn't hostile and potentially a love relationship, these bits of her necklace start falling off. So then it freaks Grey out, going, oh my god, the curse really is real. I thought the setting was really cool in regards to being in Aspen and an academy setting. I always love a school setting, things like that. I didn't like all the catty characters and all the drama in regards to the boarding school stuff. I just wasn't really into it, and I think that's where I'm kind of growing out of young adult contemporary novels, so I think that's also part of the reason I didn't like this as much. the plot resolution or how it concluded, because there was a problem. You knew that Jaya was there because her sister had been wronged and that she was gonna try to make Gray fall in love with her, and then she starts falling for Gray. What's that mean in regards to the loyalty to her sister and her family, or the loyalty to like herself and, you know, being with Gray and being a new person on her own? And it just summarized so quickly that I was mad about it. I mean, it summarized maybe in 5 pages, all like one thing. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I read and listened to that, and I was so mad. This might be a little bit of I was just so mad about the transfiguration part of it. Was messing up my owls. I was like, oh my God, why am I reading this? So yeah, that was mine. I wouldn't reread this. Like I said, I'm kind of phasing out of young adult contemporary, so that's that book. So because I read that book, I was in full-fledged panic because I was like, that did not fit my transfiguration prompt. I'm not going to be an animagus. Oh my God. And this was in the middle of the month, and case in point why I didn't finish The Final Empire right on time, it was because I got so flustered and so like, oh my God, what do I do? So I had been putting this off for forever because I knew I was going to fall in love and that this was just going to be like one of my favorite reads of all time. So I picked up Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Oh my God, I loved it. It's so good. If you are a fantasy lover, pick this thing up. It is just one of the just original things that you just need to read as a fantasy lover. It is a middle grade fantasy, and it is part of a 3-book series. This is the first book in the series, and this has also been adapted into an anime. And I love the anime movie as well as much as this book. They are 2 completely different beasts in regards to just the characters are the same, but the plots are different and the way the magic is used is different. So I thought that was really interesting, and I like read this and then immediately watched the movie going, oh my gosh, yeah, that totally, they took a lot of liberty with where they went with it, but they still stayed true to both Hal and Sophie. Hal and Sophie in the book are much more flushed out, and I mean that's with every character book versus a movie character. And I think they're a little bit more hostile towards each other in the book, a little bit more snarky, which I kind of liked. It wasn't like a mean jest, but they were just quick to like point each other's flaws out in a way that was just made them think about, oh, well, maybe I really shouldn't be so worried about cleaning, and I should be worried about enjoying life or doing things that, you know, make me better type deal. So the story, and I can't get through like a review of this book because I just get so excited and so tickled about this book. And so this was 5 stars. I read this physically because I wanted to take my time and enjoy this, and I knew I was gonna love it. And this story is about Sophie, and Sophie is the eldest of 3 daughters, and as the eldest, she's not really allowed to follow her own path, or she feels like she can't. So she takes over the family business, which is to become a hatter, and she gets kind of wrapped up in some trouble with the Witch of the Waste. And this Witch of the Waste lady is the witch that kind of terrorizes this country of Ingery that Sophie lives in. And she curses Sophie to become a 90-year-old lady. And Sophie's like, well, okay, now what? So she tries to kind of get out of the way of her family, and she goes and she kind of walks through Ingery and bumps into Howls Moving Castle. And inside of Howls Moving Castle, she runs into Calcifer, who's a fire demon. She runs into Michael, who is Hal's apprentice. And then you meet the wizard Hal. Hal is supposed to be a wizard that eats the souls and hearts of young women, and he is supposed to be heartless himself. So you learn about Sophie and Hal and how they kind of grow and kind of go through this magical journey together, and I love them. Oh my God, one of my favorite couples of all time, and just so cute. So the plot and the pacing of this book was right on par. Like, I don't feel like there was any places that it necessarily dragged. I thought there was a really cool, in the movie there's a dial of where his house door opens to. And in the movie, there is one dial that's always kind of mysterious, and there's one in here as well. They open to two different places, and I love both of them. So the one in the movie I love, and this one I thought was just such a cute throw in that I was like, oh my God, I like this way better. So super cute. Reread this in a heartbeat. This is 5 out of 5 stars for me, and forever will cherish this book. I'm gonna get Foil Society has this beautiful illustrated cover, and it's shiny, so I'm gonna order that maybe for my birthday. So there's that. I also went ahead and continued, because I got sucked into the world of Howl, I went ahead and continued the series. So I moved into A Castle in the Air, which they're calling this the companion novel to Howl's Moving Castle, and I would totally agree with that, because Howl and Sophie don't they're not as prevalent in this story, and that's why I kind of gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, because I was looking for Howl and Sophie. I listened to this on audiobook because I felt like I was having some problems kind of getting through the book itself, just because it wasn't that I didn't like the character of Abdul, and Abdul is a carpet seller that comes into a magic carpet, and this magic carpet takes him away, and he meets Flower in the Night, which is a princess, and this princess and him end up falling in love for each other, and then she gets kidnapped by an evil djinn, and he then has to come in with a genie and an old soldier and 2 cats to rescue Flower in the Night. And he kind of goes throughout his country into Ingery, which is where Howl and Sophie are from, and it kind of goes from there. I did end up picking up the physical book whenever Sophie does finally show back up in the very tail end of this book. So I think you have to read this one to get the whole kind of gist of the whole series. But I definitely would agree with it being just a companion novel versus an actual sequel to Howl's. But I would read it second, if that makes any sense. So the last book in the Howl's Moving Castle series is A House of Many Ways. It is considered the sequel, or advertised as the sequel to Howl's Moving Castle, because I think that Howl and Sophie are more prevalent in this book, so it makes it a little bit more of a sequel. But like I said, I would definitely go ahead and read A Castle in the Air right after Howl's Moving Castle, and then finish up with A House of Many Ways, because there's so many little like tidbits and little Easter eggs and some characters that keep showing up in this book that it was like, oh, okay, so you have to kind of read A Castle in the Air. So this House of Many Ways, there is this girl that has a great uncle. Her name is Charmaine, and the uncle is a wizard, and he becomes ill, and Charmaine has to go and watch over his house. Inside of his house, it's a big maze of doorways and hallways and magical things, and she has never been exposed to any magic. Her family didn't want her to. She grew up very spoiled and doesn't really know how to take care of herself. Like, she's never done the dishes, she's never done laundry, she's never like actually had to cook a meal for herself. So she's very out of her element. All she wants to do is sit and read books. She's actually petitioned the king of this country that she lives in to help him in his royal library. Well, she gets in this house and starts realizing she's in way over her head, and this boy comes in who says that he is her uncle's apprentice, or is going to be this uncle's apprentice. So he kind of helps her figure out the house and things like that. She also gets a letter from the king saying, yeah, come on in, come into the library, and you can help us kind of sort through all this stuff. As she gets there to the library, he reveals that the princess and him are also looking through these books and manuscripts, trying to figure out where all the money's gone. His country is poor, he has no idea where it's gone, and he's trying to figure that out. The princess of the country has called in the great Mrs. Sophie Pendragon. So this is where Sophie kind of steps in. She's been brought in to help kind of figure out what happened to the money and try to help a friend out, things like that. But you also find out that if Sophie's there, you know Howl and Calcifer are going to show up, and they're going to be there, and they're going to cause some extra trouble for Sophie. And I loved their trouble and their antics, and the character of Twinkle stole my heart, and I think he's adorable and just Sophie and Twinkle's side commentary throughout the book is just the best, and their relationship and development of Hal, Sophie and Hal just, makes my heart flutter, and just all the good feels, to where I gave this 5 out of 5 stars because I loved it for the fact of, or no, I think I gave this 4 stars, 4 strong 5 stars, because I just loved Sophie and Hal in this book so much more than I did in Castle in the Air, and it was right up on par with Howl's Moving Castle as well. I would reread this. I'd probably skip Castle in the Air, so. But yeah, this was my last book of the month. So guys, this was my April wrap up. I had a great time on the majority of the journeys that I went through. I think my 2 favorite novels had to be The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson and then Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and would reread both of those in a heartbeat. Wish I'd never read them and then just reread them again. So I want to hear about your reading month. How was your April wrap up? Did you participate in Owls? Did you complete all your Owl prompts? Did you become a Potioneer or the career that you wanted? Are you ready for Newts in August? So let me know down in the comments. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you like what you see, make sure to give me a like. And until my next video, I hope everybody gets wrapped up in a good book and gets carried away by the story. Bye, y'all.